Good morning. It is Wednesday, the 8th of April. I'm Maeve McMahon, and this is Europe Today, your daily dose of European news and analysis, live here on Euronews. Coming up, in an 11th hour deal, the US President Donald Trump has pulled back from threats to launch devastating strikes on Iran. A 2-week truce has been agreed on the condition that the Strait of Ormuz remains open, but Israel says the agreement does not extend to Lebanon. This comes as NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte heads to Washington today for talks with President Trump. The US leader is angered by allies for not backing his stance on Iran, putting strain on the 77-year-old transatlantic alliance. We'll look at whether NATO without the US is even possible. And just days ahead of key parliamentary elections in Hungary, the US Vice President has criticised the EU over alleged foreign interference. Speaking alongside Viktor Orban on the campaign trail, JD Vance accused EU officials of trying to undermine Hungary's economy while praising Viktor Orban for standing up to what he called Western values. We'll get up to speed with our Hungarian correspondent. But first, world leaders are reacting cautiously to a ceasefire announcement between the US and Iran that both sides seem to be hailing as a victory. To hear more about what exactly is in the plan, I'm joined here on set by Euronews' US politics expert, that is Stefan Kobe. Good morning, Stefan.
Good morning, Maeve.
So a truce for now, but it seems very fragile.
Yes, indeed, Maeve. I mean, first of all, this is not the end of the war. It's a ceasefire. And in our news vocabulary, that's probably the best word we could use today. Now, is it fragile? Yes, because we have seen earlier this morning already attacks in Israel and the region. And are there questions still lingering? Absolutely. The question number one, when does it start? Neither side, neither Trump nor the Iranians would say when it starts. And then the precondition that Trump had said would be absolutely necessary, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, that is also a little murky. Iran said it will reopen the strait, but under the condition that it will maintain the control of the management of the strait. So a lot to unpack here, and the Farsi and the American version, the English-speaking version, are not entirely clear. They're not entirely saying the same thing. But, of course, it gives us, the world, the people in the region, a glimmer of hope. And all this comes after an amazing roller coaster 48 hours or more if we include the Easter weekend, when Trump made apocalyptic threats against Iran, trying to force the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. And just hours before the deadline, he said in a tweet on his social media post, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will." Now, Maeve, we've never heard such language by an American president, at least in public. And this was very disturbing and very troubling, even for military experts that I spoke to yesterday. Now, then, 90 minutes before the deadline, Trump made this announcement of the ceasefire, mentioning the 10-point plan of Iran. And he said this will be a double-sided ceasefire. The reason for doing so is that we have already met and exceeded all military objectives and are very far along with a definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran and peace in the Middle East. Interesting, Maeve, in a subsequent post, Trump spoke of a lot of positive action that he's seeing ahead for the Middle East, said that big money will be made, Iran can start the reconstruction process, and it could be a golden age for the entire Middle East if, of course, things go according to plan.
Of course, Stefan, because this is just an announcement for now. A deal still needs to be struck. So all eyes as well on this Friday in Islamabad, whether peace talks take place. Thank you so much for that update, because, of course, Iran, for their part, has said talks will be taking place this Friday in Islamabad, but the White House is yet to confirm their attendance for those talks. For more, we can cross now over to Euronews Leon and bring in our Omid Lahabi from our Farsi news desk. Good morning, Omid. Thank you so much for joining us. Look, we're hearing Iranian state media here portraying this deal as a big victory against the US and Israel. Tell us more.
As announced, a 2-week ceasefire agreement has been reached between Iran and the United States. Iran's National Security Council has stated that negotiations to resolve all disputes will begin this Friday in Islamabad based on a 10-point plan. Iran's proposal includes guaranteeing safe shipping in the Strait of Ormuz. In exchange, they are demanding war repression and the lifting of sanctions. Based on current reports, shipping through the strait will continue during these weeks, but Abbas Araghchi, Iranian foreign minister, said passage would be allowed under Iranian military management. In addition, passing ships must pay a shipping fee to Iran and Oman as coastal states. This is being framed as a standard procedure for pilotage costs, which is already recognized under international maritime law. Another critical point is that Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif mentioned the ceasefire includes Hezbollah. However, Israel has stated that while it will stop attacks on Iran, it will continue its operation against Hezbollah.
Indeed.
So, of course, this is a significant step, but the situation remains fragile. We'll have to wait and see if this 14-day window leads to a real peace deal or just more tension.
Indeed, that's it in a nutshell. Omid Lahabi, thank you so much for bringing us all those details there from Euronews in Lyon. Well, despite the temporary ceasefire being announced, Saudi Arabia has already said it has intercepted 5 missiles. Also, Qatar, Bahrain and the UAE are still on high alert. For the view from the region, we can cross now straight over to Dubai and bring in Euronews correspondent Jane Witherspoon. Good morning, Jane. Any reactions so far to this temporary truce?
Good morning. Well, there is a real sense of optimism and positivity this morning after what was a pretty stressful and tense day and night leading up to the announcement of that temporary ceasefire. As you mentioned there, though, as well, of course, overnight, not long after that agreement was decided upon, we did have warnings of imminent attacks, renewed attacks across the region here in the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar and Saudi Arabia. I mean, our last warning alert went off at around 3:30 a.m. this morning. As you can imagine, the question, though, on everybody's lips is what happens after that 2-week period? We've got people questioning, does the Strait of Ormuz become a dump and pump scheme in terms of it's open for 2 weeks to let the ships pass? Then what happens? Do the blockades return, as well as the tension and the high stress that we are seeing? So, of course, a lot of questions, but all in all, there is a sense of hope that this is the beginning, the start, a resolution for peace across the region.
OK, a sense of cautious optimism there. Jane Witherspoon, thank you so much for that update there from Dubai. Now, moving on. All eyes are on the White House today when the NATO Secretary-General, Mark Rutte, calls by to see Donald Trump. President Trump has called NATO partners cowards for limiting US forces access to bases on their territories and for not leading efforts to open the crucial Strait of Hormuz. With so much tension in the air, some have been even contemplating whether a NATO without the US is even possible. Our Yakubianis takes a look.
Donald Trump is not always praising other people, but this one is an exception.
Secretary General is great. And Mark Rutte, he's a great person, but he's got... And you know, it all began with, if you want to know the truth, Greenland. We want Greenland. They don't want to give it to us, and I said, bye-bye.
And as NATO boss, Mark Rutte is visiting Trump today. Your reporters started to wonder, could US President say one day bye-bye to NATO? Let's look at what we have actually in the basket. Under the NATO treaty, the exit process seems simple. A country submits a formal notice, and 1 year later, they are out. But under US domestic law, it is a completely different story. In 2023, legislation was passed to block any president from quitting all by themselves. And to legally withdraw, Trump would need a 2/3 supermajority in the Senate, or a specific act of Congress. And although no one has ever fully left the alliance, Paris came close. In 1960s, President Charles de Gaulle pulled France out of NATO's military command. US troops were ordered to leave French soil, and the alliance had to pack up its headquarters and move from Paris to Brussels. And it took more than 4 decades for France to rejoin the military command in 2009. However, even if Trump cannot easily withdraw, Experts warn he could still follow a similar path and hollow out US participation. And he could severely slash funding, withdraw key personnel, or simply refuse to honor the mutual defense pledge. And if Washington stays in the alliance in name only, calling it...
This is NATO. And I've always said NATO's a paper tiger. And I've always said we help NATO, but they'll never help us.
One could say NATO is already weakened from within, having lost the one thing that matters the most, its credibility.
And that was Jakob Yanis there reporting for us. Now moving on, the US Vice President J.D. Vance continues his visit to Hungary today, where he's throwing his support behind Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban, just 5 days ahead of crucial parliamentary elections. For more, I'm joined here on set by our Hungarian correspondent, Sandra Ziros. Good morning. Tell us about this visit and will it have any impact on the outcome of the elections?
Good morning, Maeve. Indeed, yesterday morning, J.D. Vance landed in Budapest, and we know for a while that Donald Trump, the US president, loves Viktor Orban. He loves his illiberal politics, and Orban was the only EU leader who openly supported Trump's re-election bid. But Trump doesn't really like to travel that much, so he sent J.D. Vance there, and J.D. Vance was perfect for this job because he also loves Trump, he also loves Orban, but he is very hostile towards the European Union. So he endorsed Orban, he pushed for his re-election bid, but he also sent a very, very strong and brutal message to the European Union and to Brussels. So let's listen to that.
I did want to send a signal to everybody, particularly the bureaucrats in Brussels who have done everything that they can to hold down the people of Hungary because they don't like the leader who has actually stood up for the people of Hungary. And I think it's important to say that. The bureaucrats in Brussels have tried to destroy the economy of Hungary. They have tried to make Hungary less energy independent. They have tried to drive up costs for Hungarian consumers. And they've done it all because they hate this guy.
J.D. Vance there. And Shandor, how have the bureaucrats in Brussels been reacting to this statement? I know there's deep concern in this town and among EU capitals about Hungarians' ties to Russia ahead of these elections.
Well, indeed, while J.D. Vance was landing in Hungary, Bloomberg released an explosive story yesterday. It was about a phone conversation between Prime Minister Orban and Russian President Vladimir Putin last October, in which Prime Minister Orban actually offered his help to Russia. He said, "I'm at your disposal for any matter where I can help." Orban also compared their relationship to a relationship of a mouse and a tiger, which is very disturbing in a way. And this comes after various reports of how Hungarian Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó has a deep and friendly relationship with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov. Now, Prime Minister Orban was grilled on the X social media by Donald Tusk, who is the Prime Minister of Poland, and Orban replied in a tweet in which he confirmed the phone call, and he said that it's true, I spoke with President Putin about ending the war and organizing a US-Russia peace summit in Budapest. What have you done for peace? Overall, I'm personally pretty sure that behind these leaks and behind these tapped phone calls, there are some Western governments and Western secret services who are actually fed up with the pro-Russian policy of Viktor Orban. I'm also personally very much convinced that, more leaks will come in the coming days. And this is really bad news for Orban because this is a campaign issue in Hungary, and the opposition is attacking Orban very hard. They are saying that Orban is betraying Hungarian interest and he's betraying European interest as well.
Okay, Shandor Ziros, and more, of course, to read on Euronews.com. Thank you so much for that update. And now for the view from the European Parliament on all these various issues. Coming up, we'll be joined by Mark Botenga, a Belgian politician and member of the European Parliament for the Left Group. He's known for his work on energy policy, social justice and international affairs. He's also been a very vocal critic of EU economic and foreign policy positions. Good morning, Mark Botenga.
Good morning.
Great to have you with us. Thanks for joining us.
Here.
First, what is the view from the Parliament on this temporary truce between the Americans, the Israelis and the Iranians?
Well, from the Parliament, I'm not sure. I mean, we haven't had a session right now. What I think, first of all, is that we should celebrate this. I mean, this means there's no more, for the moment at least, if it holds, innocent Iranians are going to be bombed, no more schools. No more factories, no more hospitals, because this is what's been going on. And I think the position of the EU on this has been horrible. I mean, we've had speeches by Ursula von der Leyen, by Kaja Kallas, basically ignoring the fact that the United States and Israel illegally attacked Iran. So this was amazing. Like, they've been speaking about Iran attacking its neighbors rather than Iran being a victim. So we've mixed this up. So if this ceasefire holds, and I really hope so, it'll be very, very positive for, of course, in the first place, Iranians.
But there is a caveat. The Israelis have said that they welcome the ceasefire, but it does not include Lebanon. That's concerning.
Well, it is very concerning. I mean, we've seen that Israel has not respected, I mean, like the United States really in this war, any rules on international law, on human rights. And they are now trying to occupy a big part of Lebanon, you know, up to 1/5 of Lebanon. They've been ethnically cleansing the south of Lebanon. So that's extremely concerning. And once again, let me bring this back to the European Union. Why are we silent? Why are our top officials not condemning this? Why are we not taking sanctions?
Well, Antonio Costa, the Council President, has been quite vocal. He's had calls with the President of Iran. He's called the situation unacceptable. He's told Donald Trump not to move in. But of course, we've seen Ursula von der Leyen very quiet.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even Antonio Costa, when you see basically their statements, all of them, and there's been, I mean, they've got the same notes, I'm guessing. When Antonio Costa, the Council President, calls the Iranian president, he basically blames Iran for the war. While, you know, it's very clear when Russia attacks Ukraine, the aggressor is Russia. When the United States and Israel attack Iran, the aggressors are the United States and Israel. And, you know, top officials, Costa, von der Leyen, Kallas, have not been able to say this and to follow up. Because obviously, once you have this, you need to follow up with actions.
So what should they be saying and doing right now?
Well, first of all, they should have condemned the war. They should have condemned the war crimes. You know, imagine that. You've got 160 people killed in a strike on a school in Iran. And the European Union is not able to condemn this. Imagine that. They should have condemned the genocidal rhetoric of President Trump last night, saying, I'm going to blow up a country, I'm going to end the civilization. Of course, you should react. And they should have favored diplomacy. Because what have we seen? We have seen that China and Pakistan have basically taken diplomacy in their hands, have said, we're going to, you know, bring about this ceasefire by putting Iran and the United States around the table. So this is incredible. The European Union has done nothing, no diplomatic efforts whatsoever for a crisis that not only is violating human rights, is violating international law, but it was also violating our interests. You know, people see the gas prices going up and they see that our European leaders are basically, you know, on a Easter holiday.
Well, Kaja Kallas, I understand, is in Saudi Arabia today. But just the Hungarian elections are coming up this weekend. How do you feel about J.D. Vance's trip this week to Budapest and also blaming Brussels bureaucrats?
Well, it's not a surprise. You know, it's in the national security strategy of the United States that was published a few months ago, where they openly say we're going to intervene in Europe, supporting so-called patriotic forces, so influencing basically the elections inside. You know, it's direct interference. Something the United States have been doing in many countries. You know, they've been doing this in Africa and Latin America, and they're now doing it openly as well in Europe. So I'm not surprised. I'm of course very concerned. I'm also very concerned that when we speak about, also in the Parliament, but also with the Commission, about foreign interference, it's often about Russia, it's often about other countries, but it's very rarely about the United States. Well, this interference is now open, it's brazen, it's you know, unapologetic. So I think we need to take this seriously, and we need to be saying, guys, these United States, they are not an ally.
OK, Mark Botenga, MEP there from the left. Thank you so much for joining us here this morning on Europe Today. And thank you so much for tuning in and for watching as always. You can catch more news, more analysis and deep, longer reads on Euronews.com or download our app. Take care. See you soon. Thanks for watching.